Don't forget to like, subscribe, and watch till the end. The sun, a brilliant, unforgiving orb in a pristine blue sky, beat down on the sea of polished folding chairs. The heat a stark and ironic contrast to the glacial fury that had crystallized in the very soul of Maya Jenkins, who stood rigid behind the carved oak podium, her fingers gripping the smooth wood so tightly her knuckles were a bloodless white, her vision tunneling on the smug, self-satisfied face of Richard Thorne, seated right there in the front row, the VIP section, beaming up at his daughter Chloe with a paternal pride that made Maya's stomach churn, because just 2 hours ago this same man had cornered her in the stark, empty silence of the math wing hallway, his voice a low, venomous whisper designed to eviscerate her entire world. "Let's not make this more difficult than it needs to be, Maya," he had begun, his tone dripping with a patronizing faux concern that was more insulting than outright anger, his eyes cold and assessing behind his designer glasses, his breath smelling of expensive espresso and unassailable privilege. "I simply felt you deserved to hear it from me directly, as a courtesy before the official notice comes down. The board has decided to go in a different direction for the history department. Your contract, I'm afraid, will not be renewed for the upcoming year." The words had hit her like a physical blow, the air rushing from her lungs in a silent gasp. 5 years. 5 years of pouring every ounce of her passion, her intellect, her very soul into these hallways, of spending her own meager teacher's salary on books that finally reflected the faces of her students, of crafting lesson plans that dared to tell the full, messy, unvarnished truth of American history, not just the sanitized, whitewashed version that had filled her own textbooks growing up. She saw the faces of her students, Jamal, who finally felt seen when they discussed the Harlem Renaissance, Li Wei, who connected deeply with the Chinese Exclusion Act, Maria, whose eyes lit up learning about Dolores Huerta. This was her life's work, and he was reducing it to a corporate downsizing. "Why?" was the only word she could force out, her voice a strained thread. Richard Thorne had sighed, as if explaining basic arithmetic to a slow child. "It's a matter of fit, Maya. This school, our community, we have certain expectations. The curriculum you've been pushing, this culturally responsive angle, it's become divisive. It's making some of the children, the white children specifically, feel uncomfortable, guilty even. We're here to educate, not to indoctrinate with a political agenda." He said the words political agenda like it was a contagious disease. "The parents I've spoken to, the influential ones, we feel it's creating a hostile environment for academic excellence. We need to get back to basics, to facts, not feelings." Maya felt a hot flush of anger rise up her neck. "The facts are that Black history is American history, Mr. Thorne. The feelings of discomfort are a necessary part of learning and growth. We can't just ignore the parts that are ugly." "We can," he interrupted, his voice hardening, the mask of civility slipping for just a second to reveal the steel beneath. "And we will. Your insistence on focusing on these negative aspects, it's not what we pay for at this institution. Consider this a kindness, Maya. You can leave quietly with a semblance of dignity. We won't list the real reasons in your file. You can just say it was a mutual decision to part ways. Trust me, the alternative, a public dispute over your clearly biased teaching methods, will not end well for you. You'll never teach in this state again." The threat hung in the air, cold and final. He adjusted his impeccably tailored suit jacket, a man used to closing deals and crushing opposition. "Now let's go out there and have a beautiful, peaceful ceremony for our graduates. No need for any more unpleasantness." He had walked away then, his leather-soled shoes clicking with finality on the waxed linoleum, leaving her alone in the silent hallway, the world spinning, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. The weight of his injustice, his blatant racism dressed up in boardroom jargon, crushing her. And now, here he was, the epitome of the proud parent, clapping politely as the principal finished his bland, welcoming remarks. Maya's prepared speech, a heartfelt and uplifting send-off filled with hopeful quotes from Maya Angelou and Langston Hughes, felt like a sick joke in her hands, a betrayal of every student who had ever been made to feel less than, every child of color who had seen their history marginalized. She couldn't do it. She couldn't stand up there and parrot platitudes while the man who had just ended her career for telling the truth smiled up at her. As Principal Evans announced, "And now our beloved Teacher of the Year, Ms. Maya Jenkins, to give her address to the class of 2024. A wave of polite applause rippled through the crowd, hundreds of faces, Parents, grandparents, siblings turned towards her, their phones raised like a digital forest, ready to capture a moment of inspiration. Richard Thorne looked directly at her, offering a slow, almost imperceptible nod, a silent reminder of their agreement. To be quiet. To be compliant. To know her place and disappear gracefully. Maya felt a cold calm settle over her. She took a deep, steadying breath that felt like the first real breath she'd taken in 2 hours. Walked to the microphone and leaned in, her voice clear and strong, but devoid of the cheerful tone everyone expected. Good afternoon, families, faculty, and most importantly, the remarkable class of 2024. She paused, letting her gaze sweep over the sea of graduates in their blue caps and gowns. 5 years ago, I walked into these halls with a single burning mission, to teach truth. And I've learned that truth is rarely comfortable, it is rarely convenient, and it is never ever divisive simply by existing. A faint murmur of confusion rustled through the audience. She saw Mr. Davis, the history teacher, lower his coffee thermos, his eyebrows shooting up behind his glasses. A great teacher doesn't just give you answers, she continued, her voice gaining strength, becoming a blade. They give you context. They give you the tools to question, to critique, to understand the world in all its painful, glorious complexity. They show you the mirror even, especially when the reflection is hard to look at. She could see Richard Thorne now, his smile frozen, then slowly melting into a look of confused irritation. A few hours ago, Maya said, her voice dropping slightly, drawing every single person in, I was informed that my time at this school was over. My contract was terminated. The reason given was that my teaching, my insistence on including the narratives of Black Americans, of indigenous people, of immigrants, of everyone whose blood, sweat, and tears helped build this nation, often against their will, was making some people uncomfortable. The gasp from the crowd was audible, a collective intake of shock. Phones were adjusted, now pointing at her with a new, intense focus. I was told my curriculum was divisive. I was told to stick to the facts, as if the lived experiences of millions of people are merely a matter of opinion. I was told, she said, and now her eyes locked directly onto Richard Thorne's, which were wide with stunned, disbelieving fury, to know my place. The silence was absolute, electric. You could hear the flag snapping in the breeze on the far side of the field. But my place, Maya declared, her voice ringing out across the quad, strong and unshakable, is right here. Telling the truth. My place is with these students. She thrust her arm out toward the graduating class, who deserve to know their own history in all its complexity and beauty and pain. My place is to make people uncomfortable if that discomfort is the first step toward growth, toward empathy, toward a more just world. So, to the class of 2024, my final lesson, the most important one I will ever give you, is this. Never, ever let anyone tell you your voice doesn't matter. Never let anyone silence your truth because it inconveniences their privilege. Make noise, 'cause good trouble. Be magnificently, unapologetically yourself, and always, always know your worth, even when the world tries its damnedest to tell you that you have none. For one heartbeat, too, there was dead silence, the kind of silence that feels like the world holding its breath. Richard Thorne's face had turned a mottled, furious purple. He made a move as if to stand, to object, to reclaim control of a situation that had spiraled wildly away from him. But before he could, a single voice, clear and sharp and trembling with emotion, cut through the silence from the graduate lineup. She's the best teacher we've ever had. It was Chloe Thorne, Richard's own daughter. She was on her feet, tears streaming openly down her face, pointing a defiant finger toward the podium. My dad is wrong. What she teaches us matters. And that was the spark. It was as if Chloe had given them all permission. Another student stood up. We love you, Ms. J. Then another. And another. Not just the Black and brown students, but every student, white, Asian, Latino, the entire senior class, a wave of blue caps and gowns, rose to their feet as one. The sound was deafening, a thunderous, roaring, defiant standing ovation that crashed over Maya, a physical force of love and support that finally broke her. Tears she had been holding back for hours streamed down her face, but they were tears of relief, of vindication, of overwhelming love. Parents were standing now too, cheering, their phones capturing a very different viral moment than they'd anticipated. The scene was one of pure, chaotic, beautiful justice. But the shock wasn't over. The principal, looking pale and stunned, hurried to the microphone, gently nudging Maya aside, his voice trembling. "Thank you, Maya." That was a powerful moment, and it seems it's a moment for truth all around. He cleared his throat, looking directly at a now ashen Richard Thorne. "The board just texted me." They were CC'd on an email from Chloe Thorne, sent an hour ago, forwarding a recording she made on her phone of a conversation her father had with his brother last night, bragging about how he was going to get that angry black woman fired for pushing her agenda. The board has voted unanimously to reject Mr. Thorne's recommendation. In fact, they've just created a new permanent position for you, Maya, Director of Inclusive Curriculum. And Mr. Thorne, the principal said, his voice cold as steel, you are hereby asked to leave this graduation. Your bigotry is not welcome here. The crowd exploded again, this time in a mix of cheers and shocked gasps, as security approached a utterly defeated, humiliated Richard Thorne. His empire of influence crumbled to dust by the truth, and by the courage of his own child, proving that the lessons of a great teacher, the kind you find on channels like Axiom USA, never stop resonating.